We start with a point. Hi everybody and welcome back. My name is Rob Bryanton and this is the Imagining the 10th Dimension video blog. Today's entry is called Flow. Last entry, in Time and Music, we looked at a brief video clip of the classic Canadian rock band Lighthouse performing live in an experimental setup where different members of the band were in different cities, and the latency or time lag introduced by the technology of the time back in 1996 resulted in them hearing each other as much as 200 milliseconds or a fifth of a second out of sync with each other. The solution was that they had to somehow recalibrate their brains, so to speak, so that their impetus to play the notes was way ahead of when they actually wanted the notes to sound. Still, as Paul Hoffert, one of the founding members of Lighthouse who participated in this experiment, remarked in that same blog entry, there are musical instruments and musical situations where musicians regularly have to adjust their playing to compensate for a certain amount of delay, or to play ahead or behind the beat to create a certain feel. Musicians use phrases like playing in the pocket or finding the groove to describe the satisfying feeling of playing with other musicians when it all falls into place, and years of practice create the ability for musicians to play with a seemingly effortless flow. Flow is an interesting word. In my project, I often talk about how for us, time seems to flow in only one direction, but that physics places no real restriction on which direction time should happen to occur. In recent entries like The Quantum Solution to Time Zero and The Statistical Universe, we looked at some new scientific theories that explore what it can mean if time and causality are not limited to the entropy-driven single direction that we've traditionally believed time to occupy. And my insistence that time is just one of the two possible directions in the fourth spatial dimension is very much a part of all this as well. My use of the word flow led a friend of mine from Facebook, Jacob Wennerquist, a talented heavy metal musician from Sweden, to ask me about the word, as he was familiar with it from a different context. So let me read to you what I wrote back to him. Hi Jacob, are you familiar with flow in the sense that psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi uses the term? Here's an article from Wikipedia. In an interview with Wired magazine, Csikszentmihalyi described flow as being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away. Time flies. Every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one. Like playing jazz, your whole being is involved, and you're using your skills to the utmost. Let me pause in my letter to Jacob and expand upon this a bit. First of all, according to Wikipedia, Mihaly's last name is pronounced Csikszentmihalyi. Quite a mouthful. The diagram we're looking at here relates to his seminal work, Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experience. It shows how a high challenge level can combine with a high skill level to allow us to enter a state of flow. To quote further from that same Wikipedia article, he states that people are most happy when they are in a state of flow, a state of concentration or complete absorption with the activity at hand and the situation. The idea of flow is identical to the feeling of being in the zone or in the groove. Now let's continue with what I said to Jacob. When I use the word flow in my writing, I'm usually using it to describe the mainstream science idea that time can flow in either direction. Flow, in this sense, means that there are logical connections between what happens in one time unit and the next, which means that some next possible state outcomes in the following time unit are very likely, some unlikely, and some impossible to get to. That idea, physicists like Sean Carroll and many others have explained, makes just as much sense no matter what direction you're observing those slices of time. Forward or backward, there's still a logical progression to the flow. Now Jacob, I see that you are an excellent musician. I watched a few of your clips. Using the term flow as it applies to time and music is very apt. Whether you're writing a song or improvising a lead line, there are a great many choices for what happens next, but the choices are not limitless. If they were, then your music would become random white noise. If you were to take a recording of your music and play it backwards, it would still have logical connections with it that make sense. And if you were to play a solo over top of that backwards recording, there would be many options that make sense, that go with the musical flow of what's created by moving in time's opposite direction. Does this help to illuminate what I'm thinking about? Thanks for the question. I've talked before about Sean Carroll's approach to the symmetric nature of time and the underlying timelessness of our universe in entries like Time in Either Direction, The Space-Time Tree, Scrambled Eggs, What's Before and After, and The Big Bang is an Illusion. Most recently, in How to Time Travel, I mentioned that Dr. Carroll has a new book that's just come out. It's called From Eternity to Here, The Quest for the Ultimate Theory of Time. And I'm really looking forward to reading that book when it gets here. In my book and this blog, one of the central themes has been the nature of time and how our participation in that process creates the dividing line between a sea of indeterminacy and the beautiful world we see around us. The concept of flow as a process that allows us with practice to do this better is an important one. It points to a real tension we feel in these modern times. How can I tell when I'm in the zone as opposed to just zoning out? My song Automatic is about those moments when we stop analyzing what we're doing and just go with the flow. This song also mentions Julian Jaynes, whose challenging book, The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind, proposed that the splitting apart of our minds into a conscious narrator and an underlying just being in the moment is a recent event, perhaps from only in the last few thousand years. The fact that our narrator voice gets in the way and keeps us from doing some of our most difficult activities is also what we're talking about in this song. Despite the fact that we've been taught to sometimes ridicule those moments as being a bad thing because it means our conscious minds were wandering, there's really something very useful about this state of mind. That will be just as true when a musician is trying to play 200 milliseconds ahead of the beat as it is for someone trying to hit a golf ball, or even someone driving a car. Removing distractions and just zeroing in on the flow helps us to do those activities better. That's all for this time around. I'm going to show you that song, Automatic. It's one of the 26 songs that's attached to this project, and the lyrics are listed in the link that I'm going to give you. Next entry is called You Are the Point. My name's Rob Bryanton. Enjoy the journey.
Must have been running on automatic. I simply can't recall. How did I get here? What was I doing? No clue at all. Lost my place in the conversation. What were we talking about? Thought I was here. Must have been dreaming. Without a doubt, automatic, automatic, automatic. Must have been running on automatic. What was for breakfast just this morning? I really couldn't say. Circling another planet so far away. Where was my head at? Was I driving? Not even seeing the road. Was I only going through the motions? Don't even know. Automatic, automatic, automatic. Must have been running on automatic. Julian Jaynes showed me he had the answer in the bicameral mind. Consciousness broken down into pieces. Oh, what a find. We've all been running on automatic since we were back in the trees. But still we made it here on automatic. How can it be? Automatic, automatic, automatic. Must have been running on automatic. Something beautiful and complicated. Does it ever seem strange? How could we do that on automatic? Hard to explain.